Here's another example using that formula that represents the path that an object will take when it's thrown or shot. An arrow is shot vertically upward from a platform 400 feet high at a rate of 224 feet per second. When will the arrow be 824 feet above the ground? So this height above the ground is referring to the h, whereas this platform 400 feet high is referring to the h sub naught. So filling in the values for the variables we do know, we get 824 equals negative 16t squared plus, and again we need that initial velocity, and that's at a rate of 224 feet per second. And that initial height is 40 feet. So if we want to solve this equation that has more than one variable t, and t is on the same side of the equation, but I can't combine like terms because they're not like, then I need to set the equation equal to 0. Again, I'm going to do that by moving everything. Well, no, I won't. I'll just move this negative 824 to create a 0, leaving me with a negative 16t squared plus 224t minus 784. If we're going to try and solve this equation, we want to make our life as easy as possible. Let's factor out as much as we can. Let's take out that GCF. And it appears that 16, actually negative 16, will go into each one of those numbers. So that'll leave us with a positive t squared, but a negative times a negative is positive, and 16 goes into 224 14 times. And a negative times a positive is a negative, and 16 goes into 784 49 times. So again, we can factor that a little bit further. Negative 16, two sets of parentheses, t in both of them. Last sign indicates the signs are going to be the same. They're both negative. Subtract 7. That'll give us a 49 and the 14. Setting each factor equal to 0 using the zero product property, we have three factors. These last two factors, t minus 7 equals 0, is the same. And 16 as a number, so I know that one's not equal to 0, but that's why we say or. So we get t minus 7 equals 0, and adding 7 to both sides of the equation, t is 7. The arrow will be 824 feet above the ground 7 seconds after it is shot. And we know that it's seconds because the problem was given to us feet per second. Let's look at the second part of the problem, part B. When will it be 424 feet above the ground? So that's just going to change our h value to 424. And again, it's still saying when, so it's still looking for a time. So we have a negative 16t squared plus the initial velocity 224t plus the initial height 40. And solving this equation, we would want to add a negative 424 to both sides of the equation, getting our all-important 0 on one side of the equation, since we have two different variable t's in the problem. And I think when we add a negative 424 to 40, we get 384. Okay, again, let's make our life a little easier. Let's factor out as much as possible. So we have 0 is equal to, factoring out that negative 16, leaves us with a t squared and the minus 14t from last time. And now this will be a positive because a negative times a positive is negative. 16 goes into 384 24 times. 0 is equal to negative 16 times, two sets of parentheses. Lots of possibilities for 24. We've been lucky in the past. We kept getting a perfect square. But with 24, we have a couple of choices. 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. We're looking that when the signs are the same, both negative, that will end up with a negative 14. So I think we better go with that 2 and 12. A negative 2 and a negative 12. That gives us negative 14. The negative 2 times the negative 12 is positive 24. Setting each factor equal to 0, that's using the zero product property. Negative 16 equals 0, not true. We know that's never going to happen. or t minus 2 equals 0, or t minus 12 equals 0. Solving this, we get t equals 2 and t equals 12. So which answer is the correct answer? Well, if you'll recall that when we talked about the shape, it goes up and comes down. Apparently there are 2 times that it will have the height above the ground is 424. And that's once 2 seconds after it's shot, the arrow is shot, and again 12 seconds later. The arrow is 424 feet above the ground 2 seconds after it was shot, and also 12 seconds after it was shot.